Okay, 2 weeks ago we talked about pronoun antecedent agreement. And the pronoun is something that replaces the antecedent, and the antecedent is what the pronoun agrees with, or goes back and refers to, and they have to agree. This week we're going to do something very similar. We're going to make sure that the pronoun agrees in number and in person. Number and person. Second person doesn't want to highlight. That's okay. All right, first thing we're going to talk about is number. And the number is if it is singular or if it's plural. Now, we talked about singular and plural verbs and singular and plural subjects, and pronouns and antecedents are the same way. You have to make sure that if you're talking about more than one, that you stay consistent throughout your sentence. And so I've written down a couple of examples, and I hope that we can make this pen work and that I'll be able to do this with you. But let's look at our first sentence here. It says, the girls were hiking when she decided it was getting too late. Now, if you have more of the story, it could make sense, but what we're talking about right here are the girls, and that is plural. So you need a plural pronoun. So the girls were hiking when, more than likely, you would use they. It's not writing. I'm going to try it with my finger, so it's going to be real sloppy. There we go. All right, the girls were hiking when they decided it was getting too late. Now, your next sentence, we're going to start off with, they fell asleep and she slept until morning. Once again, if we had the whole story, it might make sense. But when we just have this one isolated sentence, it doesn't seem to fit. So we could either say they fell asleep and they slept until morning. So we could change that to they. And the pen is working. Nope. All right. There we go. Or we could go back and say she fell asleep and she slept until morning. So we're wanting to stay consistent. All right. Now we have something a little bit more specific because we have names here. We have James and Ed took a trip to Colorado because he liked to hike. Now, once again, this is a little vague because is he who likes to hike? Does James like to hike, or does Ed like to hike, or do they both like to hike? So we're not being specific enough, and we're not keeping it consistent throughout with our numbers. So in this case, we would rather say James and Ed took a trip to Colorado because they, and I'm having to do this with my finger, they like to hike. All right, I am walking to the store. Hang on. I am walking to the store because we need the exercise. Now, we don't know if I'm walking alone or if we're all walking because it sounds like I'm walking alone at the beginning of the sentence, but then halfway through the sentence it sounds like we all need to be walking to the store. So we need to either have that we are walking to the store because we need the exercise, or I am walking to the store because I need the exercise. And then our next sentence, his car broke down because they never changed the oil. Now, this could be talking about a person, his car broke down because they never changed the oil. Well, if it's his car, then he is the one who's responsible for that. So it should say his car broke down because he, there we go, because he never changes the oil. We have to change our verb there as well. Okay, so I know that sounds really obvious, but when you have several sentences, sometimes it's easy to switch gears without really realizing that you're switching gears and forget exactly what you were talking about. So just keep all of this in mind when we go, when you're writing your sentences. Now, next we're going to go to person, and person refers to like the first person, second person, third person. Okay? I'm still learning how to use this, obviously. But first person, this is when you are directly talking. This is when the author is directly talking. And so we're going to use the first person pronouns, I, we, me, us. my, mine, our, ours. So it's going to be like I am telling the story and I am using my perspective. Now the second person is more of an informal time that we use that. It's basically you. Anytime that you are directly talking to your audience when you're writing, you're going to use you as your pronoun. And your possessive forms are going to be your and yours. So rarely are you going to ever have this in formal writing. You're either going to be talking directly as the author and use first person, or you're going to use third person. So in formal writing, you hardly ever use second person. And that's a big thing. When you are writing an essay, don't ever use you. You always get around using you. Even if you're trying to directly talk to your reader, you still need to use either the third person or the first person. Don't use you in formal writing. But just make sure when we're writing that you're not switching gears. And now, third person is, of course, talking about other people. We use he, she, it, they, him, her, it, them, his, her, hers, its, their, theirs. So third person is other people. That's when we're talking about other people. All right, now let's go down here to these examples and make my pencil. All right, yeah, we're talking about person. All right, so our first sentence is, one must determine your priorities. Now, this switched gears. One must determine, and then we have your priorities. So unless you want someone else to be determining your priorities, this needs to be completely changed. It could say, you must determine your priorities, and reading Romeo and Juliet is one of your priorities right now. Or it could say, one must determine his or her priorities. So if we were doing more formal writing, because we're not going to use you, you're going to use his or her. Now, the next one. I fell down the stairs and skinned up his knee. Now, that makes no sense unless you had a huge collision that you ran into someone and it skinned up their knee. So you're going to say either I fell down the stairs and skinned up my knee, or you could say he fell down the stairs and skinned up his knee. So it could go either way. Now, the next one, bonus points if you know what this is from. You can't always get what you want. Sometimes I get what I need. Now, this completely switched gears, because first it's like I'm directly saying you can't always get what you want. And then suddenly I'm back to talking about myself. Sometimes I get what I need. So you have to keep it consistent. Either you can't always get what you want. Sometimes you get what you need. You get what you need. Or you would go back and say, I can't always get what I want. Sometimes I get what I need. All right, the next sentence. The boy and girl fought because she could not get along. So, unless we want to completely blame the girl in this instance, which sometimes girls can be instigators, I have 3, it's going to be that both of them can't get along with each other. So, the boy and girl fought because we have a boy and girl, it's going to be plural. So, we're going to use our plural form, not chloroform, but plural form. The boy and girl fought because they could not get along. All right, now, and like I said, when we have one sentence isolated, it's kind of hard to determine this. If you had a whole story, you could see where somebody starts switching gears and going from first person to third person and then switching maybe to second person. So you have a little bit better understanding in this second one, in this last one, because it has 2 sentences. He kept talking about her like you weren't there. I don't know how she didn't say anything. So here we have a little bit of everything. So we're going to assume that this is a conversation between, that some conversation happened and I witnessed it, okay? So he kept talking about her like you weren't there. I don't know how she didn't say anything. So if you were the one who they were pretending wasn't there, why would she say anything? Because if they were talking about her, she would have said something. So I know this sounds like some kind of like seventh grade drama, but you get the gifs that I'm kind of trying to get to here is that we've got to keep it consistent so that it makes sense. Okay, we can't switch gears and go from first person to third person to second person. All right, so how do we need to kind of make this sound like it makes sense? All right, he kept talking about her like she wasn't. There we go. Wasn't there. I don't know how she didn't say anything. All right. Now, if this was me talking to someone and someone was talking about them in front of them, I would probably say, he kept talking about you like you weren't there. I don't know how you didn't say anything. Okay, but I'm not making my pen work very well on this, so I'm not going to attempt to go back and fix all that. All right, so that is when we are talking about pronouns, and we're talking about person, and we're talking about number. Keep this chart in mind because this gives you an idea, and I'm hoping before the end of the semester that we jump and talk about case, because I feel like that's something that I see a lot of people mess up when it comes to subjective and objective pronouns. A lot of like subjects of or objects of direct objects and things like that, like in prepositional phrases and stuff. But for right now, we're going to take it slow and just do the number and person. So I hope this helps, and be looking for your quiz that will be due on Friday.